Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our participants. Welcome to today's webinar on Career Insights into Academia, hosted by CFA Institute and CFA Society India. I would like to take a moment to welcome our audience from around the world joining us remotely. My name is Biharilal Devra, CFA, and in my day job, I work as a director with Abacus Asset Manager LLP, which is the Category 3 AIF and portfolio managers registered with SEBI. I'm a volunteer with CFA Society India, and today we're going to discuss. We have had so many webinars on careers and different aspects in finance, but today's session is unique in terms of a bit different from what practitioners do in their day-to-day life. We will discuss what academicians do in their day-to-day roles. Before introducing our speaker, I have a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes, including Q&A. We will have approximately 45 to 50 minutes of presentation, followed by 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. We will be leaving enough time for Q&A after the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation on the Q&A tab. You can do so by clicking on the Q&A link at the bottom of viewer and typing the questions in the box. The webinar presentation will be available to you for download after the presentation concludes in the chat box as a link. We value your feedback, so please complete your evaluation survey before you sign off today. Now, for records, this is our 16th webinar on career insights within last 2 years. So let's welcome our speaker today, Dr. Monica Chopra, CFA. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much, VD.
Please allow me a moment before I introduce you formally. Dr. Monica Chopra, CFA, is the chair for PGDM BNFS program at International Management Institute, New Delhi. She teaches courses on business valuation, corporate finance, financial analysis, etc. During her career span of over 17 years, she had authored an impressive 16 research papers and 6 case studies and has edited 3 books. As part of a corporate interface, she has conducted various workshops across government organizations like GAIL, IGL, IPGCL, and CII on variety of issues, including valuations, M&A, financial analysis, etc. Dr. Chopra holds a doctorate and a CFA charter from CFA Institute USA. She has also had a chance to study with Professor Damodaran and has completed business valuation and investment philosophy certification under his guidance. As a regular member of CFA Institute, she is an advocacy committee volunteer with CFA Society India and is a part of core committee of CFA Institute Research Challenge and also the India representative for CFA Institute Asia Pacific Research Exchange in India. With this, I formally hand over to Dr. Monica. Monica, floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, VD, for the introduction. Hi and good evening, all of you. And first of all, I hope that all of you are staying safe and are healthy during this time. I thank CFA Institute for providing me an opportunity to share my insights on the topic career in academia. And I hope that through this webinar, I'm able to provide sufficient information to those who are looking forward to understand what a career in academics looks like, and probably those who are in industry and want to shift towards academics in long term, as well as what is the role of being a CFA charter holder. So how does being a CFA charter holder add value to your desire to enter into academics as a career? So the brief agenda of the presentation, I'll just highlight first of all. I'll be speaking on various parameters, and they will be broadly, why should you think about joining academics? So here I will be focusing on the attractiveness of academics as a career opportunity. What are the key requirements or qualifications needed to enter into academics? Then I'll be also speaking about the academic hierarchy as well as the role of industry experience in the same. What is a typical hiring process in academics, and how do you grow and excel in academics? Another important thing which people want to know, so I'll be speaking on the compensation and incentive structure in academics, and what is the life of an academician beyond academics. So to start with, why should you think academics to be a career option for you? I'll just briefly narrate a short story of mine of when I discovered academics as a career. So it is said that at some point in time, many of us have an enlightenment, and that enlightenment is regarding the career path which we want to pursue in our life. Some of us are lucky enough that we have this enlightenment very early when suppose they are in school or they are studying. Some of them have this in the middle of their career, while some may have it very late when they're just ending their career, or it may be possible that many of us do not have it throughout our lives. I was lucky enough that I had this enlightenment quite early in my life, and that was when I was just starting my career after completing my MBA. So like everybody, I also was fortunate to get a corporate job, and I decided to start my corporate career there. But when I entered into that corporate profile and I was working in a span of just few months, say 3 to 4 months, I realized that this was not something which I was meant for. Probably the gorgeousness of that profile did not actually suit me. I could not actually gel myself with that, and the reason was that in my subconscious mind I always had a desire to become teacher. And why it was there? Because since my childhood I had closely seen teaching as a profession. So being the daughter of a teacher, I had seen this profession since my childhood. I had grown seeing this profession, and somewhere I had developed a respect for this profession. The reason being that I found it to be something which can change the lives of individuals. It is something which I think can have long-term impact on people and their lives. So I always wanted to be an academician. I wanted to be a teacher. And when this realization, this moment of grace came to me, I decided. So it happens that at times we get that enlightenment, but we do not have the courage to take an action. But when this moment of grace came to me, I got the courage and I left my corporate profile. As it was my passion, and I think because I was meant for it, I was fortunate enough to very soon enter into a teaching profile, though in a small institute. But from there I started my academic career, and because I was passionate about it, so I, from that point in time, since that point in time till now, I can say that every day it has been a journey of continuous learning. It has been a journey of exploring, gaining knowledge, satisfying my intellectual curiosity. It is a journey where actually I every day get a chance to interact with young curious mind who are looking forward to satisfy their intellectual curiosity, who put forward challenging questions to me which I can't answer at times. So I feel happy, and every day when I end my day, there is a happiness and there is a smile on my face that yes, this was another day where I actually made some difference to the lives of some people in this world. So that is the charm of an academic career. And when I actually quote this in terms of what W. Robertson has to say is that the true aim of everyone who aspires to be a teacher should be not to impart his own opinions, but to kindle minds. So when I say why should you decide to be an academician, I will say that pursuing an academic career does not mean you love to teach, but it also means that you have an opportunity to make long-term impact on students' lives. A teacher is not only an academician, but he or she is also a role model. You are like a celebrity to whom students look forward to. You are like somebody whom students aspire to become like. So it is like you set yourself to be a role model for so many people whom you teach and whom you make a difference to their lives. Another reason, why should you decide to be an academician? Being in academics gives you a lot of freedom. There is a lot of freedom which you get in terms of what you want to do in terms of research. What are your teaching interests? What do you want to pursue in research? It is said that academicians have a lot of free time. I may say that yes, it is not a 9 to 5 job. We are not tied to a 9 to 5 job. We are free to do what we want to at every day. We have our class schedules. We actually take classes. That is our bounding which we have every day. But yes, we are not tied to a 9 to 5 job. But I'll say that it is not that we are free in a sense that we do have nothing to do. At times we will be working round the clock. It can be possible that when it's a weekend and the family is enjoying and you want to enjoy with the family, In corporate, of course, you may be working on weekends at sometimes. But if I am an academician and I have a Monday morning class at 8 o'clock, which may be throughout the term of 3 months, which may be for 2 terms, which may be for the entire year, it can be possible that every day, in every weekend, I am studying, I'm preparing my PPTs, I'm preparing a case, I'm thinking of what I'm going to discuss in the class. So I may be working round the clock. So what I say in academics is you need to be self-disciplined. So academics requires, it gives freedom, but it requires to be self-disciplined in a broader sense. So that is another aspect of academics. So when I say why should you decide to be an academician, it's been a good, I'll just quote Professor Matthew Bidwell from Wharton School, who says that it's been a good career choice for me because it enables me to satisfy my intellectual curiosity on a daily basis. I dig deep into subjects. I really think and really learn while I get paid to do that. So that is the beauty, that is the attractiveness, that is the joy of being an academic. You are on an intellectual curiosity journey and you get paid to do that. You get paid to satisfy your intellectual curiosity. Now, if you decide to be an academician, you need to be a good academician. So there are certain traits which are required. It may be possible that some people are always good than another. So academics is not only an art, it is also a craft. You can learn how to be a good academician. And for that, the first and primary requirement is that you need to have knowledge and passion about the subject. Of course, it is a continuous journey. You may not be able to answer every question. I may not be able to answer every query which my students put, but there should be a passion that I go back, I explore. And even if I am wrong in my answers, I'm giving my students an opportunity to learn from my mistakes. So passion is very important along with knowledge about the subject. You should have an ability to connect with the students. Academics is not only in class, it is also outside the class. You should be able to understand why your students are performing well and which are not performing well, why they are not being able to perform well, what are their challenges. So you should be able to connect with them. You should have excellent communication skills, a primary requirement of being an academic. You should have listening skills. It is not only that you have to speak, you have to listen also when others are saying, when they are raising their doubts. So you should have excellent listening skills. Again, you should be approachable so that the students can discuss their doubts with you. It can be possible that there may be some personal issues which are not, which are hampering a student's development and growth. So you should be approachable. Wo dar wala teacher is not a good trait of an academician. You should be approachable so that the student can discuss what he has to do with you. So you should have an ability to develop relationship with students. And I just say that these relationships are really beautiful relationships. They are not short term, they are long term. They grow with you, they are with you till you are there, and they are for a lifetime. So these are the key traits of which an academician should have. So now starting with the technical aspects of being in academics, I'll just, this slide is just for your reference, so you can later on see it. So basically laying the background that higher education in India is divided into regulated and unregulated sectors. And when you talk about regulated, it consists of universities, colleges, polytechnics, management institutes, while unregulated may have a number of training institutes like vocational training, corporate training, and these days we have MOOCs, massive online open courseware, which are becoming very popular as a part of higher education. Now, why is academic a good career opportunity? If I talk about the statistics which show that it is an attractive opportunity, I'll be basically speaking on those streams where we as finance professionals have a lot of scope. So when I talk about undergraduate courses, as per the MHRD survey, around 3 crore students were enrolled in undergraduate courses in 2019. And out of this, around 40 lakhs were enrolled in BCom and BBA. So there is a potential of 40 lakh students who pass undergraduate courses like BCom and BBA. And these are the courses where a finance professional has the maximum potential to get an opportunity to teach. And when we talk about postgraduate level, management comes at number 2. So I'll be basically speaking about management education, which is a very popular career choice for students in India. Where there are so many B schools, approximately 5,500 B schools in terms of universities and private institutes, which are there. And when I talk about the pupil teacher ratio in these institutes, it comes out to be an average of 29. whereas the ideal ratio stands at 10. So although the institutes the good ones try to maintain an ideal ratio, but still there is a lot of gap which shows that we have more number of students than the number of teachers which are available there. And when we talk about management, finance is one of the most sought after electives by management students, given its charm, given its potential to satisfy your intellectual curiosity, and given the kind of job scenario also which has been there in India. So when we talk about academics, I'll be basically focusing on management education and its perspective and its scope in terms of an academic career choice. So when I talk about how to enter into academics, there can be three ways in which you can enter into academics. One is like a full-time faculty, the other is an adjunct faculty, and then we have a visiting faculty. I'll be speaking about the experience required as well as what is the scope of being an industry professional to enter into these. But before I start, I'll just say that academics lays a lot of emphasis on excellent qualifications and research. So if you want to be an academician, you not only need to have good qualifications, but research is a very important area which every academic needs to have. So starting with a full-time faculty, we have a hierarchy where when you are joining as a full-time faculty, you may join as an assistant professor. Then you may move on to the position of an associate professor. The next is professor, and on the above this, we have program chairs, we have deans, and we have directors. The number of positions at this point lies in terms of how many courses does the institute have, so how many heads does it require to head each of these programs. So starting with the key requirements, as I told, the first position which you can hold in academics is an assistant professor. The salary ranges which I have written here are as per UGC and AICT, but they may vary from institute to institute. There can be some institutes which may pay higher than this, and there can be some which may pay even lower than this, but the average salary ranges between this. The key qualifications which are required if you want to enter as an assistant professor are, you need to have a master's degree or an equivalent, and at this point in time, you may have a PhD or a fellow program in management or an executive fellow program in management, though it is not required, but it is desirable if you have it. So you can enter into academics at the level of assistant professor without any PhD or a doctorate degree. But if you have it, then at times some good institutes, majority good institutes, give you a preference to entry when you are entering at an assistant professor level. Before I move to the experience and other parts, I'll just like to give, so that you are not curious enough, so I'll just like to show my slide of PhD as a criteria, because everywhere in every eligibility criteria, I'll be highlighting about the importance of PhD. So when I talk about PhD, PhD can come in three forms. One is a doctorate of philosophy. This is offered by universities. But then there are private institutes which also offer a doctorate program, and that is named as fellow program in management or executive fellow program in management. The duration of these is between 3 to 6 years. Now, when I talk about PhD, it is offered by universities, and the entry qualification is that you need to be a master's. You need to have a master's degree with 55% marks, and no experience is required. When we talk about fellow program in management, it is equivalent to PhD, but offered by private institutes. You need to have a master's degree or equivalent, but then private institutes have also started offering PhD degree to BTech students, which have, say, 1 year of experience. At times, many private institutes do not require 1 year of experience also. So you need to have 16 years of formal qualification to enter into a PhD program with a private institute, where you name it as a fellow program in management, which is equivalent to PhD. If you enter with master's degree, you may complete it within a span of 3 to 6 years. If you enter with a BTech, then you may have a minimum time period of 4 years to complete the fellow program, or maximum you can complete it in 6 years. No experience is required for an FPM. But if you enter into a doctorate program as an executive, so if you are working, you do not want to leave your job and still you want to do a doctorate, still you can do it while being in industry, while being in corporate, you can be a PhD, and there you can enter as an executive fellow, and you can do executive fellow program in management. The same number of years are required to complete an executive fellow program in management, and same qualifications are needed. But then you need to have an experience of 5 years with industry in order to enter into an executive FPM program. Plus, if you enter into a fellow program in management, there will be no fee. In fact, you will be paid a stipend per month, which varies from say 35,000 to 45,000 from institute to institute. Like at IMI, we have a stipend of 45,000 for all the full-time fellows which have joined FPM. But in executive program, a fellow program in management, you are charged a fees. So you have to pay a fee. You are not paid by the institute. You are doing a part-time, but then it is a doctorate, and the fee may range. So like I can just quote, say it can range from say around 4 lakhs to 5 lakhs if you are going for an executive FPM program. So coming back, that if you join as an assistant professor, you may have a PhD or you may not have. So if I talk about IMI, we consider it to be a desirable characteristic and a desirable qualification. And at least we say that if somebody is joining as assistant professor, then he or she should have at least submitted the thesis and should be in the final stages of completion. Assistant professor is the basic level of entry, so you may not be having any experience. So you may have 0 to 2 years of relevant experience in teaching, research, or industry. So even industry professionals are welcomed to join as an assistant professor, provided they have a relevant experience. Now, when I talk about relevant, it means that you need to have experience in the same field where you want to come and teach. Say if you are teaching finance, then you should be in a finance position. So you should have a portfolio of finance profile where you are when you're working in a corporate. Similarly, in teaching and research, you should have a similar background. Research is an important criteria. I'll again focus throughout my presentation that for an academician, research is very important. At times at assistant professor, institutes do not require research, but if you have, it is considered to be very good and you score additional points. So if I again talk about good institutes, say IMI I talk about, we need 2 good quality publications. And when I say good quality, there are certain databases, like I've named them, say Scopus and Web of Science, where these journals get listed. So the journals which are listed in such databases, which are considered to be high rated. And when I talk about rating, that rating will be in the terms of number of citations which they get and the kind of peer review process which they follow. So you need to have 2 good quality publications in these journals which are listed in these databases, and that will be a plus point for you. At associate professor, you again need to be a master's, but now here PhD becomes a desired and essential characteristic. So you need to have a qualification of which is PhD and equivalent. You need to have minimum 5 years of experience in teaching, research, or industry, out of which 2 years should be post-PhD teaching experience. So it must be that you have completed PhD and it's 2 years you have been working as an assistant professor when you are actually, when you desire to be appointed as an associate professor. You need to have again good quality publications and the number increases. So if I say associate professor, some may require more than this, but if I talk about our criteria, we require say at least 7 good quality publications if you are to join at associate professor level. At professor, the qualifications remain the same as associate professor, but you need to have minimum 10 years of teaching experience or a research experience or industry experience, of which at least 5 years should be at the level of associate professor. If you are directly want to be promoted from assistant professor, again it's possible, but you should have minimum 13 years of experience in teaching, research, or industry. And when I say industry, you should be at a managerial level of or equivalent to be taken as an associate professor. And if you are to work as a full-time faculty, then you need to have 7 years post PhD experience to be appointed as a professor. So it should be 7 years post PhD for a professor and 2 years post PhD for an associate professor, which is required to join in academics as a full-time faculty. You need to have more good quality publications. So professor, we we aspire that we have a professor who is joining should have at least 12 good quality publications. Moving forward, we have positions which is chair, then above them is the dean, and above them is the director. You need to, so any professor is eligible to be appointed at these positions. So qualifications and experience remain the same as a professor. But if you are to be appointed at these positions, then you need to have a flair for management and leadership, which is considered as a desired criteria. So either you have had a managerial role, you have led a particular team, then you will be considered for these positions. And these positions may vary and may be multiple from institute to institute. So we may have directors. So like in IMI, we have directors for various campuses, but we have a director general who actually is the single DG for all the campuses. So they may have multiple, we may have multiple positions at each level, but then you need to be a good manager to be appointed at any of these levels. The research, again, research is required, and it is same as a professor if you are aspiring for any of these. Now, the question which might be there in your mind, because I'm all time speaking of a full-time faculty with PhD. So it can be a question in mind of some that suppose I am not a PhD, suppose I am not able to do a PhD, I'm not interested in doing a PhD. So does it mean that academics is not open for me? No, we actually have a, so academics is very open to industry, and it is finding out ways in order to welcome and accommodate industry professionals. So even if you are not a PhD, you still have a chance of entering into academics without any formal doctorate degree. So if you are any graduate or a postgraduate with at least 10 to 15 years of work experience, I may not even standardize the work experience, but you should have a demonstrated expertise in some area in corporate. So I'll give you an example. For example, if suppose you want to enter into, so we have IMI's Banking and Financial Services program. I'm the chairperson for this program. So if suppose somebody wants to enter into IMI and join as a faculty of banking, then in that case, if the person is not a PhD, then he should have demonstrated expertise in banking sector. So he should have worked in a bank at a senior position, and we will welcome the person to be a PhD. We call such people as professors of practice. So at IMI, we have professors of practice. We have some professors of practice at IMI also. So there, if you are entering, no PhD may be required. Depending on the years of experience, say if you have lesser, say 10 years of experience, you may be appointed as an associate professor. With a higher experience, you may be appointed as a professor. Professional qualification, CFA or CA or any other professional qualification becomes a plus point if you are entering without a PhD in academics. So you will be able to join without PhD. Professional qualifications will help you, but you need to have demonstrated expertise in that area which you aspire to teach. When you're joining without PhD, you may be treated the same as a regular or a full-time faculty and paid the same, or you may be taken as a contractual basis. This differs from institute to institute. Majorly, this position lies in all the top-ranked, top 30 or 50 institutes in India. So they also differ in terms of their payment criteria. Like at IMI, we treat them as a full-time regular faculty and pay them the same way. But if at some institutes, it may be possible that you are paid with you have a contract and you are paid on a contractual or a consolidated basis if you are entering without a PhD. Other ways. So now you do not want to become a full-time faculty. Still you want to continue with your industry profile, you want to continue with your corporate job, still you have still teaching attracts you, academics attracts you. You can join academics even without leaving your job as a contractual faculty, both with and without PhD. And there are two ways to do that. One is be an adjunct faculty, and second is be a visiting faculty. Now, what is the difference? Now, an adjunct faculty needs a commitment of days. So maybe you have to have a commitment of 1 day or maximum 3 days in a week, and you will be paid a consolidated salary per month. Whereas as a visiting faculty, you need to give commitment for a course. So if you take one course, then it's like 3 hours in a week. If the course is scheduled for 3 hours in a week as a class, you have to come for your classes, you have to take your classes, and just that is the requirement. You can take classes on weekends, you can take classes on weekdays, you can take classes in evening, that is your choice. And institutes are very flexible in accommodating your time schedule as per your corporate profile. As a visiting faculty, you will be paid on the basis of per course. So you will not be paid any consolidated salary, but you will be paid on course basis. So suppose you take a course of say financial analysis for one term, then for entire term, there will be a lump sum payment which you will get. Your entry as an adjunct or visiting faculty depends upon the requirements of the institute, whether they require your demonstrated expertise. So we generally prefer people at senior positions who have worked a lot in a particular area. So suppose you have worked a lot in wealth management, so we will always be happy to have a visiting or an adjunct faculty for say wealth management or investment management courses. It also depends upon how much connections you have with the existing faculty. So you have to explore, you have to actually connect with the faculty in the institute, and you may share your CVs with them, and we will be happy to call people for from industry as an adjunct or a visiting. There are other ways. So this was if you want to be a faculty, whether a regular or a contractual. There are other ways in which you can actually participate in academics, and that can be like we conduct a lot of business thought leadership sessions. We are very happy if people from industry come and they give us thought leadership sessions on various topics, and we also are glad if we have people who can mentor students as industry mentors for various projects. So currently also I requested many of my friends, fellow charter holders, to give some live projects to my students, and my students are working with them and they are mentors for these projects with them. You can actually come for some special or guest sessions. So so say I'm taking up a course of business valuation, and in that course we have a provision that say 3 or 4 sessions I can call an industry expert to speak on particular topic. So we can call, we actually call people from industry for conducting guest sessions during our regular courses also. You can come for mock interview sessions to make students prepared for placement interviews. Another interesting way in which you can contribute towards academics is you can be on academic advisory boards. So we have our academic advisory board for our PGDM general program, also our banking and financial services program also, where industry experts come and they help us in not only designing as well as restructuring of the curriculum, giving us inputs from time to time how to improve that curriculum over a period of time. So that is a really important help which we get with industry people being on our advisory boards. You can also actually contribute for content development. And if I just give an example, that CFA Institute also welcomes people from industry experience to contribute towards development of content of the curriculum. So that is another way in which you can enter into academics or related field from your corporate profile. Does being a CFA charter holder help? So there are 2 ways in which a CFA charter, being a CFA charter holder can help. One is if you are an academician, what is the role of CFA for you? And one is if you are entering into academics with from outside, from industry, how does a CFA help you? So the first point, CFA for an academician. I'll just talk about myself. So when I talk about myself, being a CFA has given me immense help. So it has not only helped me in getting a promotion, it has not only helped me in cash, but it has helped me in kind. And that has been the biggest help which CFA has given me, which being a charter holder has given me. That is, it has enhanced my knowledge base. It has helped me in satisfying my intellectual curiosity, which I speak of. It actually differentiates you as an academician in front of your students. They know that you are somebody who is well aware of the current facts, who has read, who has actually appeared and gone through that curriculum which is considered to be a gold standard. So it has given me a lot of knowledge which has helped me to grow, which has helped my students to grow. So I have been able to pass that knowledge to them, and that is the most important satisfying criteria which I think CFA has given me. It has given me a lot of recognition from my employer. I'm very thankful to my employer to have recognized me for being a CFA charter holder. So that is what you can get as an academician. If you're entering into academics being a CFA, of course, CFA is a professional qualification and it will always add additional value, especially if you're entering without a PhD. CFA will actually make you appear different from anybody in the industry who may be entering without a CFA. So it gives a differentiator to you if you are entering into academics with a CFA. What is a typical hiring process? This process differs from institute to institute. I'll be speaking on this, but then I'll be speaking from the perspective of say what IMI actually does, but almost the process is similar. There may be some steps which may be less or more in this process. So when you want to enter into academics, you have to give your CVs, and those CVs are shortlisted by faculties in the concerned area. So like we have 10 faculties in finance area, and whenever any CV comes, we all coordinate and shortlist that CV. And after shortlisting, we require a face-to-face trial class with students. That is very important for us because students are the ones whom you have to actually be pally with. So we require a trial class which may range from 30 to 90 minutes based on your feedback of that trial class, and we require say a 3.5 out of 5 as a minimum feedback. You will be shortlisted, and all these shortlisted candidates from the trial class are to go for a research presentation. Here you will be presenting on a specific topic, which may be your area of research or any article, or you may discuss about some specific key area, say in finance. And after you are having you are done with your research presentation, there will be an interview. All the research presentation candidates will compulsorily go to an interview, and after the interview with the panel, you will be shortlisted for or being offered for a position depending on your reference check, the check of authenticity of your educational qualification. So this is a typical hiring process which happens in academics. There are rounds where you have to prove yourself in front of students and in terms of research which you have done. Now, once you are in academics, how can you grow? How can you excel? So growth in academics is a 3-step process. It is a ladder. It is a 3-step process consisting of experience, teaching, and research. Now, when I talk about experience, suppose you join as an assistant professor, then to be promoted to associate, you need to have spent 5 years at the position of assistant professor. So you need to be in the institute for 5 years. Now, suppose you have joined the institute for a period of less than 5 years, then minimum you need to be in the institute for a period of 3 years and outside the institute for a period of 2 years. So total 5 years experience with minimum 3 years in the institute experience is required to be promoted to the next level, whether it is assistant or associate or any other level or professor level in the institute. Before 5 years of experience at a position, you may not be promoted, and 3 years internal experience is a minimum one. You need to have a good teaching feedback, and that may be say around minimum 3.5 on a scale of 5 is required for being promoted, and that may be a weighted average of various courses you have taught. The third is research. That is the most important of all the criteria. So if you are entering into academics, be very open to research. You need to have a research bent of mind if you are in academics. That will only decide your growth and your excellence there. As per industry standards, so suppose somebody is at a level of assistant professor, then 5 years of total experience with 3 years in the institute is required. But during that time, he or she should have published at least 5 peer-reviewed publications in various good quality journals. And I have also given a hyperlink of various databases which are a home to these journals. You can go back and see what kind of journals are there and what kind of papers get published over there. You can also publish various cases. So if you publish cases will be business situations, but cases with a teaching note, so as to enable people to understand them fully. And there are databases like Harvard, Ivy Business School Publishing, ECCH, where good cases are listed, and you need to have cases over there. So this is considered. So when I talk about it, is more of publications in terms of journal papers, and then additionally, if you have cases, it will be considered an additional plus point in terms of research. So experience, teaching, and research are 3 important steps to move up the academic ladder. If you are coming from outside, they are important again. You need to have research, you need to have experience, but your growth depends upon also the kind of background you are coming from, the ranking of. So if you are coming from academics to academics, then if you are coming from a higher ranked institute to a lower ranked one, probably you may have to come at the same position. But if you're shifting to a lower ranked institute, you may be offered a higher position there. If you're coming from industry and you're coming from a senior position, then your position may be maintained. If you're coming from a junior position, then it depends upon the kind of qualifications and expertise you have. You may be taken at the basic level, and that may be that varies from institute to institute. So that growth from outside depends upon a lot of factors, where educational background as well as research, again, as I say, are a major criteria in deciding your growth of in the academic ladder. Now, something which I think everybody might be interested in understanding, and when I talk about academics, it is thought that it is not a much paying profile. It may not be at par with corporate, but we have salary, and as corporate we have incentives also. So we offer incentives when we are working in academics. It may differ again from institute to institute, and when we talk about top 30 or 50 institutes, these incentives almost are there in all of them. In lower ranked one, you may have some of them missing. So it depends where you are working. So when I talk about incentives, we have incentives for extra teaching. So if I say that I suppose, so like if I particularly give our example that we are to take a minimum teaching load of 5 courses. If I am in administration, then I may take only 4 courses in a year, and that is done to ensure quality of your teaching and give you enough time to research. So if I take 4 or 5 courses, which is my minimum load, that is actually not eligible for incentives. But suppose I launch a course, I float a course where I say have 300 students take up that course, and I have multiple sections, and my course load goes beyond 4 or beyond 5, which is my minimum teaching load. In that case, beyond my minimum course, so suppose I have 4 as my minimum course, if I take any additional course, I will be paid for every additional course I'm taking at the same rate as a visiting faculty in my institute. So there is an incentive for extra teaching. We have incentives for consulting, which are shared as a 60% basis to 60% to the faculty and 40% to institute. So I bring a consulting assignment. So for example, being at IMI, I was invited by IIM Amritsar to teach. And when I went there, whatever it was considered as a consulting assignment, I can have consulting assignment with any industry also, maybe working on any project. Whatever revenue comes from there is shared on a 60-40 basis. I get, so if I'm in academics, I may be paid for my administration responsibilities, which may come, may not be directly, but as a reduction in teaching load and hence extra teaching benefits. We are paid for conducting management development programs where we are not only paid for, so suppose if I launch a program of finance for non-finance executives, so I will be paid for being a director for this program, as well as I will be paid as a visiting faculty if I take the sessions in that program. Now comes the heart of incentives in academics, which is research and publication. So to promote research, every academic institute tries to give incentives to its faculties. And when I talk about these incentives, so if suppose you publish a paper in an average, a B category journal, so there are categories, there are rankings. So we have A category, B category, C category. So if I say about B category journals, then you can be eligible for an incentive of say up to 1 lakh rupees per paper, per publication. And if suppose you are able to bring an A-star rated publication, then you are eligible for a high incentive as high as say 15 to 20 lakhs per paper. So that depends upon the quality of research you do. You have a lot of scope to earn by writing cases, you get royalties for books. So if you go on writing books, and those royalties can run a lot. So you can earn a lot depending upon the kind of book, because if you are teaching, you have a scope to actually get the book promoted also in your institute, and you have a network where you can get it promoted. So generally that becomes a good earning stream when you are in academics by research and publications. So again, I'll reiterate that research is a key requirement from an academician, whether it is in the form of cases, or you have some working papers which you present in conferences, or is it a journal publication, or it is in the form of books. Whatever way, research is very, very required for an academician. And when I actually talk about research, it can be possible that being an industry professional, you may not be very well aware of the kind of research which is required. So we have a website called ARX, Asia Pacific Research Exchange from CFA. So it's a very useful database. It's a very useful platform. Even if you're not a charter holder and you're listening to this webinar, you can go back and you can create an account. Anybody can freely create an account on ARX. Once you create an account, you can just log in and you can see what kind of publications are available. So ARX is a platform which hosts a number of academic as well as industry researchers. You can see, you can understand freely what kind of research is required, and you can also contribute. So if you are just on your starting journey, you want to start doing research, you can write a small paper, may not be a very extensive, but a small article or a book review, and you can publish it on ARX, which will give you not only happiness that you have done something in research, which is the first platform, but it will give you a lot of exposure of what research is all about. So I advise you, I encourage you to please go back and you can see ARX once and understand. If you're interested in understanding academic research, you can just visit ARX and understand about it. You also have access, as charter holders, we have access to Financial Analyst Journal. So you can go there and see what kind of, so it is an A-rated journal from academic criteria. You can go and it has really good papers which are up to date as per industry standards, and they are really extensive in the terms of research they are bringing out. So for an extensive research, you can understand the same from Financial Analyst Journal. So to summarize, to achieving excellence in academics needs good teaching feedback, it needs research, it needs consulting MDP, very well, it needs ability to mentor students. So students are the primary responsibility which you have when you are an academician. There can be some questions that what if I retire? So the particular retirement age for a professor is 65 years. So beyond that, what beyond academics? You can have a lot of scope even if you are not working and you have retired and you are not there in a full-time profile. There can be that it depends upon your network and connections. There are board positions where corporate and regulators have academicians on their boards. You can be an editor for various journals. You can be a reviewer of various journals. You can be an author and earn a royalty. So as a retired life, it is a very good profession to be an author, that will give you a royalty as well as a satisfaction of doing something for which you have actually taught, which you have actually experienced over your lifetime. You can join various training organizations. You can provide your training. Many of our charter holders are also providing training. They are having their training institutes for financial modeling training, prep providery training. They can be there. There is a very attractive opportunity which is coming up, which is MOOCs. So you can launch your own online courseware. You can launch it, and that can again be a revenue generating potential for an academician. A very different and interesting way which you can actually follow beyond academics is because you have spent your entire life dealing with students, understanding their psychology, making them skilled. So you can very well enter into coaching also. You can give life skills training. That is an interesting and a different aspect of academics. So basically, these are the various other ways in which you can excel beyond academics also. There are various research firms which conduct investment research. There are consulting firms which you can join. That depends on how much active you have been during your academic career with the industry. So there are a lot of scopes which you say you have beyond academics also. So finally, from whatever I said, I'll just summarize my presentation by saying a quote which is there in a book called Tuesdays with Maury. And this book is on the relationship between a teacher and a student. And I am really happy that this was gifted to me by my student only. And as per the last ending lines of the book, what does it say is, have you ever really had a teacher? One who saw you as a raw, but a precious thing, a jewel that with wisdom could be polished to a proud shine. If you are lucky enough to find your way to such teachers, you will always find your way back. Such is the splendidness of a teaching profession, that a teacher can find a raw and convert it into a jewel for a lifetime. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, Monica. I think splendid webinar, and I think we had tons of questions. I didn't realize that academic is also as lucrative as
BD, I think I can't hear. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure. Right.
So thank you for that wonderful webinar, and I think we had tons of questions. I didn't realize that academics could also be as lucrative as industry.
I also.
So before we jump into questions on your topic, I want to ask you $1 million questions which all the CFA candidates and charter holders have. CFA versus MBA. Should you go for CFA or should you do an MBA? And now I understand that you are the chair of a program.
Joining academics? Are you asking
No.
for joining academics?
I'm asking from a student perspective who, eventually wish to pursue something. Should they pursue a master's really? I mean, you being a chair of a program at Masters, I thought let's hear it from the horse's mouth, whether a master's degree is really worth it or should you do your way towards CFA if you want to get into finance?
So BD, that depends on what is your aspiration. If you are just say, so CFA has its own advantages and MBA has its own. I may not say that, I may not be able to very clearly have one option out of two because it is a person's perspective. And I'll tell you what perspective. So if I suppose want to have a flair of management, I want to enjoy various curricular activities which a student who is doing an MBA wants to do. I want to interact with a number of peer students and I want to understand, I want to grow in my psychology terms also. So MBA is something which can give you an exposure on that standard. But you want to be a technical person. So if you say, I want to be an engineer, it's fine. You are an engineer. So if you want to be a technical person, soundness of technicality is of course with CFA. So that depends on what is your aspiration, whether you want to be technical only or whether you want to have a technical edge as well as a managerial flair. So I will also suggest, I will suggest that it is a combination which always works the best. And that is why we also have got affiliation with CFA Institute for our banking and financial services program, where we encourage our BFA students to go for CFA because that adds on their knowledge base. So knowledge wise, I will of course say there is no comparison of CFA in the terms of quality of content which it offers and the rigorous mechanism of passing it. But yes, when we talk about an overall holistic development, yes, MBA will be an added advantage. So I think a combination will always work the best.
Wow, I thought better than a politician in terms of answering this diplomatically.
I am both, no, so that I actually value both.
my personal perspective is typically, you learn a lot of soft skills and other aspects of handling or dealing with people during your MBA. So if you have to do an MBA or a master's program, don't do it in finance. Do it in marketing. Because that's what you need most. For finance, you can do a CFA and you get your knowledge in finance. MBA is not going to teach you anything extra. But a combination of marketing and finance can you take you way ahead where it is. Anyway, moving back to where we were. Now you did mention, why people join, this thing and what people can do. But I mean, all of us, from an industry perspective, always have that, midlife thoughts in terms of what are we doing and where we want to go. In terms of academics, what motivates someone to stay in academics? I mean, every year you will have hundreds of students, saying similar kind of questions, similar kind of doubts. I mean, don't you get bored?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So, yeah, of course, we have, so when I talk about academics, every year you have students and every year there are different students. Every year the kind of students varies and the kind of questions varies. It is not the same. Even if I'm teaching business valuation course, I'll quote Aswath Damodharan also here. So he says that it can be possible that 3 or 4 times he has got the same question, but he's not bored with it. It is that probably he has not answered it well, so he has not explored it well and included it in his discussion in the class. So the question arises every time. So the questions may be same, but the way they are put up to you may be a challenge every year. I have been teaching for say 18 or 19 years and I have been teaching a particular course for so many years, but every day when I go, I prepare. So that intellectual journey doesn't end when it doesn't end any day. The questions are always a challenge and you do not have answer to the questions which are there many times. So you may not be aware of many facts still. So it is always something new. It is a newness. And when you talk about being in say a middle age or say when you are about to retire, so at a age where you are about to retire also, every day you feel very good because when you are going, you are having a set of say 60 to 80 students who are young and who have their aspirations. So when you go, you feel young every day. And that is the best thing which you have in academics. It does not make you grow old. So I'll always say from my perspective, yes, you may have the same student, you may have the same course every year, but you may have different students. They're different human beings. They have different thought processes, different levels of intelligence. So they pose different questions and every question is a challenge.
On a clarificatory question, how many hours do you have to study before taking a class? I mean, you are also a teacher and a student, right?
I do not quantify. Whatever I study is less, but yes, for a 3 hours class, if I have to prepare a 3 hours class, I think minimum I have to spend double the time. So at least 6 to 7 hours for a 3 hours class I
Maybe
have
half
to.
the time, no, since you already know the content.
No, every time I have to. And when I talk about me, I think I do more. I'm not satisfied with, even if I study for 6 hours. So for me,
Now, Monica, you mentioned a lot about research and a lot of ways in which I think faculties do contribute. If you can differentiate a little bit between writing a blog or article on LinkedIn versus writing a case versus maybe writing a paper, then maybe reading a book and maybe doing a book review or writing a book. Where do all these fit in terms of depth or effort or expertise? I mean, where does one start in terms of if he has to start his journey of writing?
Yeah. So when you talk about these, the basic step can be a blog. So you can start writing a blog, and as I said that you can put some blogs even with. So if you are a charter holder, then we have blogs of CFA, our society also, CFA society. So that is the starting point. Once you are very good and you understand how to write, the next step can be, say you prepare an article, a proper article with some data, and you analyze some situation over there. Once you are good with that, you can go to a case. So a case can be a live situation where you explain a business problem. So if you are in industry, you have a lot of things which you face every day. So you can take up a business situation and you can develop a case. Once you have known how to write a case, the next step is a research paper. So research paper involves a lot of review. So suppose I'm also writing one of them with my colleague. So she's also attending the webinar today. So we have been working for last 6 months, and we have just read various papers. And every time we read, we find a new issue which has to be explored. So you have to do a lot of review of literature, and then you have to collect data. So we are gathering, say, 30 years of data. So that will become again very difficult. So at times you have to spend a lot of time. So it becomes a next step. Then you have to go understand a variety of tools of empirical research, econometrics, statistics. So they are also required. Once you are done with this, you write a research paper. And once you are good in research papers, the next step can be a book. Or yeah, I can say book can be simultaneous also, because book is something which you write on basis of what you teach. So it can be very good that what you teach to your students, you can give them as a form of a ready-made material, and they will always appreciate that. So suppose I have written a book, I teach. So in our case, we have a faculty who has around 6 to 7 books. So it's every area where the students say, okay, un professor ki to book bhi hai. So that is very good when you talk about writing a book, which can be there in simultaneously. Once you are good in writing cases, so you have a writing ability, you can start writing a book also. But a research paper involves a lot of steps, from review of literature to, say, a lot of empirical research, and then the findings, and a structured way. So that may take the maximum, that is the highest. And when I talk about the value, of course, which takes a lot of effort, is valued more. So everywhere to excel, a research paper is valued more. And we have ranking processes by HRD ministry also. So all the institutes which have a faculty with more research paper publications, they are given a higher ranking. So ultimately, the institute also prefers if we have more research papers. Of course, books also are a good criteria to evaluate.
Well, I'm sure if you're going to get my salary as a, as a remuneration for one paper, it has to be a better quality paper.
Yeah, the amount of, so that's why they are remunerated also highly. So
sure. There was a question which said that in India, you need a NET or SET exam for getting into academics. Is that true?
For UGC, there is an NET or SAT requirement for you entering into a university. If you are a PhD before 2001, then you do not need a NET or a SLET. But after that, if you want to enter into university system, then you need a NET or a SLET, but not for a private institute.
Sorry, what's the difference between a university and a B school?
So a university is under government, so it may be central government owned or a state government owned, whereas private institutes, B schools may be owned by, so they may be private, they may be run by a trust, so they may be autonomous institutions, not with any government.
A private B school.
I didn't get you.
IMI would be?
So it's a corporate sponsored institute.
Understood.
By RPG Group.
Sure. Okay. Wonderful. Now, there was a new education policy which was released recently, and I think there were a lot of changes done in terms of the education structure and other things. Any comments and thoughts on how it's going to evolve and change academics?
Yeah. So when I talk about this policy, the major change which I think which it will bring out is that we had something called SE, Special Education Zones, SEZs here, and these are to allow foreign universities to enter into India. So of course, when I talk about job perspective, the job perspective will be broader because we will have more foreign universities coming. It has it is going to provide more flexibility to the students to opt for various courses. So you can end with diploma and then continue again, or a degree and continue again. So it is also going to do a lot of boost to say online education, which say suppose I get a diploma and then I do an online program and then I again revert back to my degree. So that is another potential, but the highest potential is for allowing the foreign universities where job potential is going to be very, very high once we get this, and competition is also going to be very, very high among these schools. So that is the thing which I specifically see with the new education policy.
Sure. We have seen a lot of movies where the professor and students are good at maths and they are minting millions of dollars in Vegas in blackjack. Does that happen in India?
No, so of course.
In other terms, I mean, do you work with your students to develop, models or stock ideas or run student funds? I mean,
yes. That's there. So when I talk about like I was previously with Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management, and we had a fund called Nivesh. So it's a mutual fund which is run by the students. And as a part of my course now also, I'm taking up investment analysis, security analysis and portfolio management. I have given a project to the students where they will develop a fund of their own. So they have a group. Some people will become, let's say, like they will have a marketing profile. Some may have a research profile. Some may have an investor relations profile. So that way they will mimic a fund. And once everybody is done with, we will evaluate with other faculties how they go forward, and we will see if we can formalize it and we can go forward with an actual money commitment also. So of course, we give a lot of projects to the students as a part of this exercise so that they have practical learning. Otherwise, a theoretical learning may not be sufficient enough to complete the course.
Sure. You did mention something about masters, requirement of masters, while joining academics. Now, the variety of, courses like CA or CFA, which are considered equal to masters in a lot of universities. But is there a difference between masters from open university versus, part-time versus full-time? Is that a differentiating factor when you join academics?
BT, it can be depending on the kind of research you have. So if you are even a part-time, but you have a good research, you may be taken, but generally we do not prefer a part-time degree. It's a full-time which is required. So there is no standardization in terms of whether part-time or full-time, but as per industry standard, we prefer to have a full-time degree rather than a part-time degree.
Sure. There's a very specific question. Like, we have a lot of job portals for corporate jobs. Where do we find opportunity to enter into academics?
There is no job portal for academics. It's only that you have to go and see the institute's website, or we have advertisements from time to time. So whenever any institute requires, we advertise in major daily newspapers. So it can be, say, any newspaper you can refer to for which gives other job advertisements. So all the academic profiles are either on the website. So if suppose you say about IIMs, their website contains career section. Even MTI, IMI, everybody contains a career section. You can go and search there. Otherwise, whenever there is a requirement, it comes in the newspaper, and the season of that requirement is generally from, say, February to July, where there is a lot of requirement of faculty. So you can be more careful during this time period to look for more job opportunities via newspaper media.
Sure. There are a lot of questions in terms of people who have maybe a few years of experience, maybe between 0 to 5. And they don't know whether, they obviously all of them want to get into academic, but they don't know whether, this is a good time to do that, or evaluate in terms of whether they are ready. Any tips for those?
I think if they are interested in, I think, suppose if somebody is having less years of experience and not interested in joining corporate, academics can be a good, so if I talk even about my students who are passing, some of them are interested in joining academics. It depends upon your interest. If you are interested, you can look for PhD and you can join PhD, and you can at the same time try for a visiting position over there, which will give you an idea of, say, how academics looks like. So if you are not sure about a full-time, you can look for some visiting faculty position, and you can, with your connections, you can get it, or with some, you can also try with some training institutes where you can join for some courses, some coaching institutes where you can join. So I advise get a flair of what academics is look like, because as it is new for you, so I think you should have a flair of it before you formally decide to enter into it.
Sure. And is the experience of these coaching institutes or private organizations considered when you apply for a, adjunct or assistant professor?
If it is a coaching institute, so again, it depends. Probably in majority times, you may have to join at an assistant professor level. So at assistant professor level, you may have a 0 years of experience also. But if you have a coaching institute experience, you can show it. It again depends upon how you perform, what kind, if you have done some research and your educational qualifications. So suppose if I say I'm a CFA with 0 years of experience, I join a coaching institute and I work there for a year or so, it will not be considered to be a waste. It will be considered, but because my educational qualification is adding a lot of weight to me. If I'm a CA or a CFA, so that adds weight. So it's again, depending on your educational qualification, your coaching experience may be considered good and you may be given a plus point. But of course, from a coaching institute, you may have to join at the basic level of assistant professor.
Sure. In terms of, from an employer perspective, a lot of times we find people are, the fresh batch of people who come out as graduate or postgraduates are not really focused on what they want to do. They are too much short-term oriented, switch jobs, they don't know what they're doing or they do what they want to do. For them, first 2-3 jobs are just trial and error. Is there something which, professors or universities do apart from the industry mentorship, to solve this demand supply gap, which is right now there in industry or in India at least?
So we generally we do consulting. BD, can you just explain your question? I didn't get it completely. Can you just...
So you mentioned there are 3 crore people who graduate every year in India.
Yeah.
There are like approximately 5 lakh people who do post-graduation, right?
Yeah.
On one hand, we see an industry or economy which is thriving, which is going towards $5 trillion. On the other hand, we see a lot of people, especially post-grads, and they say they are unable to find jobs. So what is the real issue? Where is the gap?
So I think it's skill. We in that case, there are a lot of online trainings which we try to give to students through these MOOCs also. There are a lot of courses on Coursera. So whoever are graduating or are fresh graduates, the problem is that a particular specific skill has to be developed. So at times our education system may make us more general rather than specific. So that is why I say that if you, after your graduation, you start with your CFA, probably that will be a better skill which you have. So skilling yourself is more important. And I think that for that, academicians, professors can add on by giving more of online trainings and having more open courseware, which are available with all the top universities. Or you can also, or there can be a more awareness which can be created at an undergraduate level when they are studying, of having more specific skills when they are going out. That will help them more than being a generalist in their approach.
Sure. And last question, in terms of the education, the way the education is delivered, at least in the Indian context, is it very different from what is done in Western? I've heard models which are case-led or discussion only. Depends on, whether graduate or postgraduate, but is there really a big difference between the way it is taught here versus the rest of the world?
Yes, there is. I'll say that we are less. So when I talk about this again, from the right beginning, we do not, it should be to kindle mind. So research from the student's perspective is also very, very important. So when I talk about Indian education system, we have evolved. We have started following whatever is being followed in West, but we need to do it better. So following more and more cases, case-based learning and practical projects. So that is why the new education policy focuses more on vocational training. So I think that was a gap which has been fulfilled by this new policy. And if it goes on successfully, we will probably catch up with the West. So that is the key area where I think that we can have more of contribution from the academic side. So basically, it's more of practical understanding of a subject via projects, via vocational training, via live projects, industry exposure, cases in the class, more discussion based. That can make the education more worthwhile for everybody.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Monica, for your wonderful presentation and your insights. As a reminder to our listeners, please do complete the evaluation survey that has appeared on the screen at the end of the session. The link to the downloadable presentation is already posted in your chat box. If you are a CFA Institute and a CFA Society India member, you may claim professional learning credit by logging into the online PL tracking tool. Do not forget to register for our upcoming webinar on 20th of August on CEO's Insights, Alternative Strategies and Alpha by Andrew Holland. Thank you for participating in today's webinar, and thank you, Monica, once again for such a lovely presentation.
Thank you so much, BD. Thank you for being such a nice moderator also. And thank you all of you for joining today. Hope you are safe and keep fine.
Copyright 2020. All rights reserved. This program is designed to give accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is distributed with the understanding that CFA Institute is not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, tax, investment, or other expert advice. If legal advice or other expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional should be sought.